needs no introduction. Ryan Jones of Bromine Sports is here to host a panel of educators and parents and community-minded citizens about being involved in our school system.
Hello everybody, how you guys doing? Probably one of the best panels I probably had ever. So I'm gonna let these guys pretty much reintroduce themselves.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Anthony Rodriguez, a co-owner of the Humble Knuckles Tap and Deli up the street, and I am a parent of adult children and just a community business person. Want to know how to plug in and help the community.
Hey everybody, my name is LaShawn Jenkins. I am currently the assistant principal at Tarboro High School. This is my 19th year in the educational field here in Edgecombe County, the county I grew up in, and so I'm just excited to be here tonight.
Good evening, my name is Victor Jones. I am a therapist working out of Rocky Mount, also serving in Edgecombe and Wilson and Nash counties. Father of 2 children, a 13-year-old daughter and a 21-year-old special needs child. So we've had some experience with those wide variety of the educational spectrum.
Hey everybody, good evening. I'm Kellyanne Mudd, and I'm the principal at Martin Millennium Academy, right down the road. This is my 2nd year in Tarboro. It's my 14th year in Eastern North Carolina, and I'm excited to be here.
Good evening, everybody. My name is James Gilbert, and I am a human resource specialist with the Edgecombe County Department of Social Services, the Fatherhood Initiative. I live here, and I have 5 daughters that's gone through the school system. I have 3 currently in school, and I have a concern for young people, and I definitely want to invest in them, as well as all of the fathers here.
Hello everybody, I am Philip Lampron. I am the upper school principal at Northeast Carolina Prep. We call it upper school, so we have grades 8 through 12. So my wife and I have been in the area for about a decade now. We have a 16-month-old who hasn't gone through any school system yet, but does go through everything in our cabinets. That's fun. And then my wife is also an educator. She's the principal at Tillo. Yeah, that's me.
That's our panel, people. So what we're going to start with is, I brought this Cultivating Change up just because I want to see more involvement with parents. So I have a very unique panel from different areas in society. So I'm going to let one of them guys start and kind of give us their intake on how they feel. Like, some of you guys are principals, so you kind of deal with the kids, the students, pretty much every day. All the time. Parents probably happy to give them to you. So, tell us what you think that needs to happen from a parent involvement.
Well,
Oh, you ready? Okay. I got 2 mics actually.
thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of a parent. I have 5 daughters. It's all girls around the house. See myself as the king, but they obviously don't. But my girls are academics. All of them have done well in school, and I thank God for that. And I think it has a lot to do with the involvement of the parents, of my wife and I. We have high expectations, and I think that's what most of the parents in the area need to have for their children. High expectations help them set goals for themselves. And I find that a lot of the kids in the area have low expectations. Some of them don't even expect to go beyond high school, and that's a very concerning, disappointing thing that I see the trend here. But I think that parents, if you can just be more involved in the kids' life, and that's whether it's in school, whether it's athletics, whether it's being employed. I mean, anything, it requires just more parental involvement. And I can probably elaborate a little more on that. I don't want to take up so much of the time with the mic, but I'll add some more of my thoughts as we go along with the panel here.
So I would say that I know one thing that I can do better at as a school leader is inviting parents out for more informal matters, right? I feel like every time that we have something at school, it has a separate purpose that parents may or may not be interested in, right? So I think parents, some of our parents and students may have not had the most thrilling experience at a school, so they have a certain connotation whenever they come into a school. So one thing I can do better at is having very relaxed environments of like, why don't you just come and have coffee with me, right? So like, let's just sit down and talk. Why don't we all come meet at TBC and just get to know our staff? Things of that nature, because I feel like when we have a set purpose for certain things, if the parents don't understand what those things are. So for example, if we have an EOG and EOC night, and some parents are maybe like, they're not as comfortable speaking about those topics, they're not likely to show up. So I think that having genuine conversations with parents is another part of it, and just I think that we're getting to a place in our community now where we have consistent leadership for a long time in Edgecombe County, both at charter school and county schools. Like we've had a lot of turnover in leadership, and so I think we have more consistent people who are here now, have lives here now, live here, work here, engage with the community. So like I think that the doors are starting to open to conversations that didn't used to be there. But to be able to have those conversations and then translate that into how do we now connect that with the educational environment for your kid is an important conversation to have. So I think that, you know, one thing that some of the ways that we can work towards that end is just to continue having those open dialogues and also having like informal sessions that don't necessarily have a targeted specific goal or end in mind. It's just come get to know us, come get to know who we are. And like, I would ask that parents like know that in a school, like we have to make a ton of decisions all throughout the day. And like some of them are gonna be wrong, full disclosure. Like I read an article recently that principals have to make between 60 and 100 decisions a day. I ain't gonna be right on all of them, I'm not. But everything that I do, I promise you, is never gonna, like in my mind at the time, it's gonna be for the best interest of your kid. Is nobody's gonna be set out to like do harm to anybody's child. Like we're trying to do good things. Sometimes we're wrong. Like we're gonna do better to fix it next time. But like just I guess be open to. There's a phrase that my wife uses that says assume best intent, right? So like. Might not have got it right that time. I had a different thought process in my mind, but like we're trying to do things that are good for kids, and we want to continue that process. So, yeah, just be open to the conversation.
Brittany wants to take the mic now.
I'll give it right back. Working in mental health and working in domestic violence and that just range of working with children and with their families. What I'm finding is that our expectations guide how we look at people, and what we know about people guides how we look at people. So in my visiting museums up and down the coast, it has kind of shocked me when I see someone from Edgecombe or from Wilson or from Rocky Mount in these museums up and down the coast, and I'm like, wow. If this person could do this wonderful thing in these varieties of places around the country, why couldn't they have done those things here? And I wonder about our expectations. And when I have children, they come to me for therapy and they're telling stories of not being appreciated, whether it's in their communities, sometimes it's in their schools. We all make decisions, and even in the mental health field. You know, sometimes we have low expectations for our kids. So being really honest with ourselves, for me to be real honest with myself and ask myself, what is my actual expectation of this child? And how is my perception of this person shaped by that expectation? So I think that's an area that we can work on, is really being honest about where we're getting our information from about our kids, and then what are we doing with that.
I think Mr. Lampron hit it, on the head. one thing I think we need to keep in mind as we are soliciting parents to come to our schools to be more involved. The first baseline question is, like, how welcoming are our schools? Is it a place that parents feel welcomed at? Is it a place that parents feel is a non-threatening environment? I mean, especially when you look across like demographic, like subgroups, like, there's certain subgroups who have things on the line, by showing up at school. I mean, so I think we need to really explore, like, what does our school climate look like from a parent perspective? What does our school culture look like from a parent perspective? Because the truth of the matter is, like, school can be a very intimidating place for parents just to show up at. Sometimes it's based on the marginalization of their own educational level. Sometimes when we start speaking this school language, like, it's intimidating for parents. And so I think a good starting place in terms of, trying to get parents more involved in schools is to really, like, take a look at our school and say, like, hey, like, is this a place that parents would want to just show up at? And if I did invite a parent to my office for coffee, like, is it an invitation that they would say, sure, I'll show up, And so I think that we should start there to really do some cultural scans of our buildings and of the people who work in our buildings to make sure that we are enticing for parents and are an attractive entity in terms of parents from a community perspective.
Anthony, your turn.
Yeah, I actually don't
I had to say that.
Not being from the school system here, I haven't really, been in the schools. My kids grew up in the New York school system, and I grew up in the New York and Westchester school system, but I'm sure teachers and school administrators face similar problems all over the country. I'm sure there are some differences based on region. I don't see anything different. Getting parents involved is really the culture. My kids were involved in different schools. I have 2 girls and a boy. I had them in Christian school at one point. I put them in public school at another point. I put them in homeschooling at a certain point. So I've gone through a lot of administrations, a lot of teachers. I was that parent. Doctors hate to see me come in the office because I'm not just doing what you tell me. Explain it to me. And that's really the culture you want, right? But it's a balance too, right? Because I don't want 50 parents calling me to ask me a question that, you know what I'm saying? That is either answered on a broader scale or you just can't do that, right? So my question would be kind of what he mentioned a little bit about, is it a culture where parents are involved? And if it isn't, how do we create that, right? That, I don't want to say it this way, but what we're talking about could be a generation away. If it's changing the culture, it might be his child might be experiencing the change in the culture, but I think it begins there, right? What's missing? Look at what's missing. What are the shortfalls? Self-analysis, which I think this panel and this conversation creates, right? Let's begin to talk about what we think the problems are, so that we can begin to build a net around our kids, right? Because we've got issues like, and great panel, like it really is a cross-section of what the community is, what the community deals with, and the scope of what we have and to deal with in the community. And I think the broadest thing is not just educating the kids that are easily educated, but building, as a community, building a net that captures all the other kids that have severe dysfunction, right? That's not going to change in one family. That's not, you know what I'm saying? It might change one person to break the curse, right? But it's going to take another generation to step up, right? And bring then the next generation up. So I'm excited to be here as a panelist. I'm certainly not as qualified, but I certainly have the passion for young people. I didn't give my experience, but years of youth ministry in the urban community, Queensbridge, if you know Mom P, that'll express to you the type of kids I dealt with. I did that for years. Widely ball, I've coached baseball, basketball. I've worked a lot with young people, and I just love to put young people on, right? Because that's, to me, like in the street, that's what we do as educators, as mentors. We put people on. Who doesn't love somebody who puts them on, right? I'm in a new neighborhood. Yo, where can I go? Oh, you can go here, you can go there. There, you're gonna get this. You appreciate that person. The next time you see him, hey, how you doing? Because that person yesterday put me on to something I didn't know. Now they put me on to something I know. That's school. Your teachers are putting you on. your mentors, right? The administrator, everyone's putting these kids onto something. A lot of years of youth ministry, I can tell you I've had a lot of conferences where parents told them the same thing. At about the same age, at about the same time, you're going to disconnect. They're going to disconnect from you because somebody else is putting them on more sincerely and more genuinely than you are, even if they don't like the information, like their friends, like TV, like the media, and all those things that we fight against, right, in society and culture to protect our kids with. So I'm just excited that this is even happening, that all these folks here are having the opportunity for the public to come and really begin to hash out what are the issues, where are we, what needs to change, you know, what can be better today, what can be better tomorrow, and what can be better in the next couple generations.
Ms. Murray, you want to talk? Yeah, sure. Please converse with us.
So I agree with all the gentlemen who spoke, but I think a big thing, and I don't know the key, but so I think it's finding that key, but it's creating trust. And I think whether it's finding a safe space or a non-formal space for parents to come in, but I can echo what Mr. Lampron said in terms of, I don't ever make a decision to harm a child or to harm a family or in any way, and I trust that none of my teachers do that either, or any adult that I let in the building. But there's a distrust, and there's a lot of valid reasons for members of our community to have distrust with our school system. So it's trying to figure out how do we build that trust and let our kids see that like we parents in school, like we're in this together. Like we are fighting the same fight to put you on, to make sure that you're going to the next level, and decide what our expectations are for you. But it is not us against them, it's not parents against school. And from a school perspective, just constantly thinking about, did that decision I made, did it put a barrier up? Did it break one down? The conversation I just had, did I put a barrier up or did I break one down? Did I allow space for parent voice to be heard, or did I just say this is what's happening? And so constantly being reflective from that standpoint. But looking for opportunities. Again, I don't have the key, and I'm open to hearing others. But how do we recreate? Not recreate. For some, it's never been there. How do we create trust and this message that we are a unit. And we want to be a unit, and we want to be a partner. It's not a leader. I'm not above you. I'm not below you. But a partner. So I think that's where it starts, and I don't know that yet. But I think we've heard some great ways to do that.
I'm going to go out here to the audience and see if they have any questions for the panel, and then I'll start diving into a few questions, if anybody wants to say anything.
Good evening. I guess my question is, when you say you want to see more parent involvement in the schools, exactly what does that look like? That goes to anybody.
I'm gonna be real here. I grew up the old school way, and my parents, or my grandparents, my biological parents, my grandparents, used to come to the class and sit in my class. Now parents just can't walk over and go to the classroom and just be involved in that way. And a lot of, parents grew up old school, and when kids get out of hand, there's some things what they do with their hands. And some of those things are not encouraged anymore. But one of the things I do as a parent, action speaks louder than words. When you talk, and I talk, but I show action. My kids know that if they get out of hand or if they're not doing well as supposed to in school, I'm going to be out there. My wife and I, both of us, they know that we're going to be out there, and they don't like to deal with it when they get home. They'd rather do well in school, try to avoid as much conflict as possible because they know their parents are going to be out there to their school. And we're not out there to yell at the teachers or anything out there. We want to hear what the problem is. And a lot of it is just go out there and hear. Just go out and listen. Before you start yelling or screaming or anything with the teachers, just go out there and listen and just try to come to a decent resolution. Parents just need to show up. If the children know that parents are going to be, say, at their sports events, out there in the stands, or at the PTO meeting, or if they're being inducted into the Beta Club or something like that, it'd be a shame your child has been inducted and you're not even there to support them. So I think, if these children see that the parents are involved in that aspect, the good as well as the not so good. So those are some of the things I'm not as well versed in the educated as some of these people on the panel here, but I think as a parent, I have a lot of experience being a parent, and I'm a living testimony as to you being involved with your children, the good and not so good. I think you will find some positive results. There's no recipe as to what to do to have your children put out the best, but for me and mine, just being a strong figure and just being involved in every way possible, I think you see positive results in that children. Setting goals for themselves and high standards.
Coach Jenkins.
That's a great question. And as you asked the question, I was thinking about two things. I was thinking about, there's parent involvement and there's also parent engagement. And so just through my own self-reflection, like my mom couldn't come to the stuff. She couldn't come to the games, the NHS inductions, because typically she was always working 2 jobs to make ends meet. And so even as a Division I college athlete, my mom was limited in how often she could come and see me compete. And I was at East Carolina. But you better believe she was 1,000% engaged, meaning everything that happened to me academically, socially, behaviorally in school, she knew about it. And so for me, what does parent involvement look like? I think for me, and I think it's different for all of us as leaders, I just think that parent engagement is important. So if I need you, I know you're available. And it could just be like, look, hey, they went from an A to a B. I think there's something happening. Can we partner and just really be involved and see what's going on? So your presence is really powerful. I won't negate that. But even if your presence isn't possible, that your engagement levels are there. So even when you can't physically be present, you can be engaged in what's happening with the kid, and it's just so amazing. It's just awesome to be able to call a parent and say, look, I really need to talk to you about your kid's well-being, and they're 100% engaged. And it's really discouraging when you call a parent and their response is, well, what do you want me to do? So if you can't give me presence and involvement, I'll take engagement, which doesn't always require your presence, but it requires your attention.
We got a question in the audience here.
So I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate that you want the parental involvement. I'm fortunate in that both my children have now graduated from public school. They are both serving in the military currently. I have 2 boys. One is 22 and one is 20 years old. And they are both in the Air Force, serving our country. But one thing that I struggle with as a parent is the support from the administration for the educators on the line to make the educators available and to make them accessible for the parents in a timely fashion. What I mean to say is that if my children have an issue and I am, as a parent, am engaged, what is the administration doing to support the educators who are already spending a lot of their extra time trying to encourage participation from the parents? How is the administration supporting the people on the line to be able to respond to parental concerns?
So let me just clarify, your question is how is the administration helping the teachers in this capacity, correct? So I will jump on that also, and I think this kind of goes to your question as well. I want to speak on something that Mr. Gifford mentioned as well. So he mentioned that in times past, parents would come in and say, hey, I want to visit my kid's classroom. Okay, cool. My first job as an administrator is I got to protect our kids, right? So I would facilitate that if you give me a heads up, I asked for 24 hours notice to be able to visit a classroom. Here's mainly why. I've had one particular instance where not at the school I currently am at, but in the school I've worked at in the past, where a parent was just coming to drop off their kid at school, but then they visited another classroom and started fussing at somebody else's kid about something that kid had said to their kid the day before. I need to know who's coming in, who do you want to see. It's not to put a barrier in place to access the teacher. It's my first goal is to protect kids, and so I consider every kid in we have about 400, and all 400 of them. So if you're coming after my kids, I'm gonna come back at you. So I do ask for scheduled meetings with teachers. When there's a concern that comes up, or if a parent's upset and wants to meet with a teacher, I ask that we schedule it. We sit down at an appointed time, not when we're immediately mad or angry about a particular scenario. So if a teacher's uncomfortable with meeting with a parent independently of me, I definitely come into those meetings. Either me or our dean of students are going to sit down and kind of facilitate that. I do ask typically if a parent has a question about a grade or things of that nature, I go to the teacher first, give the teacher a chance to fix it or talk about it, or the teacher is the one in the classroom with the kid, they're going to have more knowledge about that than I do. So go to the teacher, let the teacher have that conversation, and then if you're not satisfied with how those things went, you come to me. If you're not satisfied with how things went with me, you go to my boss, and it kind of just matriculates to the chain of command. But so I would ask that just parents in general to go back to your question about what do we want to see from parents. For me, I just want to see understanding that every decision that I make, I promise you to go back to our point earlier, isn't to hinder anybody from accessing the teacher or accessing me. I deliberately try to plan out my day in about 30-minute segments of whose class I wanted to be in, depending on what the data looks like, depending on what concerns I have. I try to literally schedule out my day in certain increments, so I'm in certain places to get the highest leverage impact on our kids. And so if you come and ask to meet with me, I may not be able to meet with you at that time. Nothing to do with the fact that you're mad at me or whatever. I literally have it scheduled out, so I'm going to ask, my front desk person is going to ask you to leave your number. I'm going to call you back, we're going to schedule it, we're going to sit down and talk. I'm not going to avoid it, we're going to have these conversations, but I do schedule out my day in such a manner that I'm in certain classrooms. I try not to be in my office. I want to be in hallways, I want to be around kids, I want to be around teachers. I feel like my kids know me, and that's important to me, that they know who I am, they know where to expect me at, they know they can come to me, they're going to see me in the lunchroom if they have something, they're going to come to me typically with a situation so that I can prevent it from going to a point to where somebody actually gets in trouble or things like that. So by me scheduling out my day to not be in my office, that makes it kind of hard to find me sometimes, and I'm sorry for that, but I feel like it is highly important for me to be around my kids and around my teachers each day. So just to be understanding of that. I'm not trying to avoid the conversation, but I just want to plan it out and have it scheduled for them.
So I'll speak to that a little bit, how do we support teachers? I want to always model that every person that's in my building, we treat as humans. And so children get treated as humans, parents get treated as humans, but I also expect that our staff get treated as humans. And so I'm gonna support them in the fact that, like, if you need to make that call, make that call, if you have that conversation. But what I also want parents to know is that I ask a ton of my staff during the hours that they give me. And when they leave my building, I expect that they go home to their own family. I expect that they go home to the things that they love, that brings them joy and that fills them up. And so I am cool with if you leave at 5 o'clock and say, like, I need 12 hours to refill to be my very best in front of your tiny human in the morning. And so similar to that, like asking for grace to say, like, I have an expectation of like a 24-hour turnaround. I have an expectation that if you need me, I'm gonna be there and I'm gonna support that conversation, always with the goal that everyone in the conversation feels valued and capable and confident to be phenomenal. But that I also want everyone in that room to feel like a human and to do what they need to do to fill up. I'm gonna allow kids to do that in whatever way they need to during the day, but I'm gonna let the adults in my building do that in whatever way they need to when they leave my space. Because when they walk into that space, I have extremely high expectations for how they approach children, parents, colleagues, each other, and how they approach themselves. And so sometimes I think, and that's where I love this conversation. And now I'm thinking, like, how can we just have this conversation when more parents are at school? Like, you don't want your job calling you at 10 o'clock at night. And our teachers lose sleep over, like, did I return the call? Did I do everything for that kid? Does that parent feel great? And so I ask, like, the way I do that is, like, I support my teachers in saying, like, you create your cutoff. Like, you create what you need to show up the next day to be 110, 150, 200% for kids. And I'll support you in that when you're here. So.
Go ahead. You know, I wonder if we take into consideration how much education has changed over the last 50 years. I think I'm probably the oldest person on this panel, maybe the oldest person in this room. I was in the 3rd grade in the school integrated in North Carolina, in Raleigh. And at that time, when I was in the 3rd grade, we had 2 teachers per 30 students. Then we went to having a teacher and a teacher's assistant, but they were highly, highly qualified. And then we went to larger classrooms and less support, larger classrooms and less support. So those are legislative, governmental decisions. I recall reading an article about how money was being taken out of education and we were losing quality people. So we find ourselves in that situation where we're trying to do more with less. And we're slowly going through burnout. And I think we've been going through this burnout so long, it's kind of like that frog in the pot of water. And you don't even realize you're getting cooked. And I think to a large degree what we're seeing with our kids as well as with our parents is folks that are being cooked. So looking at things, again, my training is as a social worker. So we're looking at things from a historical perspective. We look at the failings in our own profession, but we're also trying to look at what's happening in our society that's putting us on a particular path, and where will we be 5 years from now if we stay on the same path? The things that we're dealing with didn't happen overnight. They've been happening over the course of the last 40, 50 years. Our decision, if we choose to accept it, is to say, hey, what do we want to create that's going to actually help us to be a much healthier, stronger, happier community across the board, and not just keep doing the same thing and going down the same path.
Just from the outside, just to speak a little bit to your question about what would we look for. I'm not speaking as an administrator, but being a parent, you look for strong parent movements. That's how you know parents are engaged and moving. I was a single dad with 3 kids. I commuted all the way to Connecticut from Queens, New York. So I wasn't there all the time for everything. I had 3 kids, sometimes in 2 different schools. But you know what I was tapped into? The PTA at each school. I was at those meetings. I I don't know up here, I was speaking to Ryan earlier, I don't know what the role of the PTO. In New York, PTAs are powerful organizations. I don't know if y'all want to deal with that as administrators, but when you put parents and teachers together, things change, things happen, things move. And I know in New York, I was in schools, you know, where the administrators use the PTA, you know, to deal with the policy stuff that comes through. And so PTAs are very powerful in New York. They manage huge budgets at the schools, but their role is disseminating information for parents who can't be there all the time. It takes the academic ease that they talk to me, who, you know, doesn't understand all of that and why the changes and how they impact my kid, and why is my kid the one that out of the 10 that gets left out because of policy change. And you're trying to have that conversation with someone who's a professional at the school in the middle of their day or at the end of it, that's not going to happen. But you know where that happens? At a PTA meeting twice a month that you can go to, because the PTA offers it once or twice a month. We vote the PTA board in, they deal with the administration, they disseminate the information, they cooperate to do what's best for our kids, and they come back and meet with us as parents and tell us really what's going on, how the school needs the support. So I didn't know the administrators. I woke up and on parent-teacher night and meet everybody fresh, but I knew who they were because the PTA was all in it, you know, and it disseminating the information to the parents. And that helped parents who couldn't be there at least be engaged. Because every day in the book bag something came, and the schools supported the PTA ferociously because it's how they got parents, it's how they got volunteers for events, it's how they got, you know, when they would do, you know, in New York, you got an elementary school with, I don't know, 800 kids, and, you know, assembly time is serious business. You need more than just the security and administrators. You need 100, 200 parents to come in. Call Miss Such and Such in the PTA. She'll get you 500 parents. So that's, you know, I don't know that that's what we're looking, but that's how I would know that there's a culture of parent engagement, a strong PTA boards. When the administration has problems, if the PTA is on their side, all of a sudden there's no problem. Because in 2 days, the entire community of parents are going to know what's going on in that school. And they have me. So to me, that's what it looks like. It looks like that net being built, right? Where, you know, the administrator just has to speak to the head of the PTA board, who speaks to her staff, her 3 people, who then get the word out to every parent in the school, making calls. I've gotten calls at 9 o'clock at night from the PTA, 10 o'clock at night from the PTA, a special meeting tomorrow to go over when they were changing how they taught math. Man, the PTA came up with the system. I mean, the teachers were all there to do the teaching, to teach the parents, but they had to teach us. That's when my kids were in elementary school and they were changing how math was done. I don't know, y'all know about that. Common Core, I don't, you know. But the PTAs who set up the, you know, the weekend classes for the Spanish parents, the Greek, you know, it was always in 3 languages in the school that my kids were at, because it was Greek, Spanish, and English. So, you know, I don't want to say let's make the PTO boards powerful like New York, but I know that to answer your question, when you see movements like that happen, where organizations come together as parents, you know, that's how, right? That's how we move power, right? I mean, that's how things are done, right? There's 1,000 people outside. We better change that curriculum, or at least review it. There's 1,000 people outside from 10 different schools in the county. You know, that's what PTAs can do to help build that network. And so when you hear from another parent, you know, teachers don't have time to do that. They got to teach the kids, but get the PTA on there. So, or PTO, whatever.
I'm just curious, y'all still have
I have a question.
PTA or?
I have a question. And maybe like a follow-up.
You need a mic?
No, I can project. Hi. My name's Addison. I've been a teacher in this county for a couple years, and like kind of just work in a lot of different facets in this regard. A couple of things. One, like, what do we do in a place like Edgecombe County where even with a PTA that is maybe considered very strong, are we looking at a situation really where the parents who are involved in PTA are actually disseminating that information to the other parents who aren't there? Parents who maybe like don't speak English or are just like not available to be there for whatever reasons they might be, which are valid and fair? And how do we start creating a culture where no matter how intensive the involvement of the parent, the student is still supported, and the teacher is supported in that partnership that we've been like speaking to, like Ms. Mudd had commented on. There's a reason that like parents aren't English teachers and parents still often get blamed for their children's literacy. English teachers are the ones who are trained to deliver that content, right? And so that blame can't be entirely based on parents. So how do we start creating, like I said, this culture where every kid is supported regardless of what that parent involvement looks like, and how it's set up necessarily in the school?
And I don't want to answer that question.
You got a mic, please.
So,
Come on, Mr. Jenkins, I know you got it.
I was trying to gather everything that you're asking, so this may or may not entirely, but one thing that rings in my head is accountability. It's kind of like, I was reading an article the other night about just like how to convert high poverty schools into high performing schools, right? And so that article was alluding to the fact that kids who grow up in poverty hear 50% less spoken words before they even get to kindergarten. So I was like, man, what does that look like for a kindergarten teacher who has a set of kids here who know all the numbers and colors and letters, and here's a group of kids who only know the numbers and not colors, and here's a group of kids who don't know anything. So I was like, thank God I was a high school history teacher, you know. But I'm thinking like, we don't have any control over what comes to us in the classroom. You know, I spent 16 years in the classroom, so I didn't have any control over what came to me. And so I couldn't control like what you knew when you came into my class, but I had a lot of control over what you knew when you left. And so I think sometimes we, high school teachers, blame the middle school teachers. Middle school teachers blame elementary. Elementary's blaming the parents. Parents are blaming DNA. You know, so you know it's accountability. You know, it's the piece of like, regardless of where you are and what level you're at when you get to my class, like I want to make you a believer in not who you are, but who you can be and where you can go. And I think that if we embrace that accountability piece as educators and understand that I'm just not here in this classroom just by sheer like luck, but like I felt that being a teacher was like part of my destiny. And so I felt that I had no choice in terms of like how to help my kids grow and what to help them see themselves as. And so, and even that's not really common. You know, like I think sometimes like people now, I mean, the demographic of teaching has changed. Like you have teachers who say like, hey, like I'm not sure what I want to do right now. I just know I'm 21 and I love kids, so let's try teaching. And so it has a lot to do with like that mindset of like where you're at. Like I knew when I was 10 years old I wanted to be a teacher. So I'd already practiced all of this stuff my whole life. So when I arrived at my classroom, I felt like I'd already been there. And so I didn't feel like I really had to make excuses. I was prepared for the battle of what I was going to be faced with. And so I think that accountability piece, we have to just embrace the fact that kids, parents send us their very best. It's the best that they have to offer us. And sometimes the students come like way ahead of the bar, way below the bar. And so instead of making excuses, I think we should substitute the excuse making with just effort. You know, and I just believe that when you really pour into every child and individualize learning for every child and treat every child as a special entity, I think they have no choice but to leave your classroom or your space better. It may not be at the level that maybe you predicted or that EVA says that they are, but at least they leave better, believing in who they can be and where they can go.
Looking at what your question, you made me think of something that is a wonderful opportunity here in Edgecombe, is that we're becoming more and more aware of trauma. And when we're talking about parents whose kids are not ready for school, quite often we're talking about parents who have been traumatized. And I think you mentioned that there are reasons that there is distrust within the community, and that goes back several generations. So sometimes if we can say, you know what, that parent may be doing the absolute dead level best they can just to get out of bed and get some clothes on their kid to go to school. And their kid is doing the very best they can to get out of the house and make it to the classroom and not flip everything over. So then if we can take that understanding, that level of compassion, and say, now how do we learn to communicate? How do we learn to understand? How do we learn to connect as human beings and heal, not just heal those hurts and those scars and those wounds and that distrust that has been generated over the past of our lives and really come together as a community. So we have those resources here with Rural Opportunities Institute and so forth. And if we will really get down and really spend some time with each other, learning how to reconnect on a nervous system level, we can do some fantastic things. It has benefited me personally, and it benefits my clients a great deal as well.
When you talk about community, so then if there's no parental engagement, how do you involve the community that is not parents of school-aged children?
Alright, so a couple of things I will speak to that. I also want to speak to echo Mr. Jenkins talking about accountability, because like, for real, like, if he decided when he was 10 years old, I think I decided in high school about wanting to be a teacher, so like, and that doesn't necessarily mean everybody who decided to be a teacher early on would have the same mindset, but like, it mattered to me, if my kids didn't perform in my classroom, that's my fault, right? Like, I gotta own that, right? So like, if it's a kid who's not trying, that's one thing, but if it's a kid that's done everything I've asked them to do, and they still didn't get it right, yo, that's on me. Like, I gotta figure out what I did wrong. And so we've got to build this community of educators, and I think we've got enough people kind of gathered around this idea that like, okay, yeah, kids got some stuff that they can do better, yeah, we got stuff we can do better too as adults, but we've got to like perpetuate that throughout each and every school that we have, and hold people accountable for that, so not hold them accountable for being perfect. And tangent, I like EBOS, I love EBOS, not everybody does, but like, EBOS is what the state uses to measure our growth as educators, and like, did we do as much as other people in the state of North Carolina with kids who have a similar testing history. So like, I just remember when I saw my EBOS scores and I was in green, which meant I met growth, but that also meant that there were other people who did better with kids that were like mine. And like, that bothered me. Those are my kids that I invested a whole lot of time into and spent time on the weekends building lesson plans, and in my mind I had done everything I could for those kids, but somebody else could have done better. Yeah. And that bothered me. So we have to create a passion around that like, yes, our kids come with stuff, but also like, we come with stuff that we got to figure out how to deal with as well. I think this next point addresses your question as well about getting parents involved who don't have school-aged kids, because another thing that Mr. Jenkins mentioned is that like, there's a book around the 30 million word gap, which is what he was talking about when kids come to kindergarten. There's like already a gap of like millions of words that kids who are traditionally successful in school understand a certain number of words, and kids who are not already have like a deficiency of millions of words, and the gap doesn't close as we go through school, it gets wider. So what if we could do something about kids before they come to us? Because like Jeffrey Canada started Harlem Children's Home in Harlem, New York, and the way he started his charter school was before the charter school ever existed, was he knocked on doors in the area to find parents of 3-year-old kids and younger, and started saying, let's meet here on this day and let's talk about parenting things. And what should kids be doing at this age? How can we help them at this age? What kind of words should we be saying to them? How often should we be speaking to them? What kind of sentences should we say? There's some software out that's actually, I believe it's still in existence, called Lena, which is language analysis software that like you can, we could like ingest into funds into low-income areas, because it would monitor like how often the kid is getting spoken to and send you feedback of like, here's the time during the day where you didn't speak to your kid as much, you might want to ask them this question at this time, and it would give you feedback like that. But like, what if we, as a group of educators or a community, just said like, all right, cool, we're gonna start having parenting classes in different pockets of the community. So parents of, well-respected, not school-aged kids, right? Like, come and share your wealth of knowledge with us, and like how to help parent these kids who are from 0 to 3. Let's make sure we're getting them as prepared as possible before they ever enter a school building. Let's make sure that they know their numbers and colors and words, and like try to do everything we can to invest in kids, because we know from brain development research that like a lot of times by 5 years old, a lot of your brain is developed. So like, it's really, really hard to overcome that obstacle once they hit kindergarten.
But that's not my area of expertise. My point is that I'm a parent.
Right.
I have had 2 successful
would push back on you and say that is your area of expertise. You have 2 successful children who you've raised. So like, what did you do, you know, at those times? That, like, a lot of these parents, we always talk about kids having kids. So like, we have some kids in our schools that are currently pregnant. Like, they don't know how to raise a kid. They don't know what should be happening from 0 to 6 months, from 6 to 12 months. Like, let's help feed them that information. We can't expect them to read it in a book.
What is my venue then to access those children that are not my own, and I'm not certified, I'm not.
That's what I'm saying. Like, as a community, what if, I'm spitting out hypotheticals that as charter schools, local public schools, we came together and said, hey, let's go talk about this.
Ladies first.
Oh, yeah, ladies first, go.
No. I guess to more so address your question, I don't have any biological children in Edgecombe County school system right now. So I'm just here representing myself, and I guess I can say some things that the panel may want to say but can't say. The first thing I'm gonna say is, like last Friday, Saturday, half of Tarboro was in Durham supporting their football team, but tonight where are those parents at?
Right.
You know, so that's what we have to start at first. You're in the community, you have to meet the parents where they are. So that's an issue, priorities. That's the first thing that's wrong. I've been in this thing with Edgecombe County Schools for a long time. That's when I met Camillus. I think it was 2009. So like 10 years ago, we started a campaign then, and it was called Bridging the Gap Between Parents, Teachers, and School Administrators. And none of the educators that are here now, I don't even believe were here when it was a lot of different things going on. The Edgecombe County school system looks a lot better in the last 10 years than it looked when I was dealing with some issues when I had younger children in the school. There's always room for growth, but I can personally say that I see the growth and it's going in the right direction. Definitely when you have so many people who are not born and raised in Edgecombe County and they are deciding to stay here year after year and raise their families here, and they're migrating from other places and they're highly marketable and they could be anywhere else in the United States, but they're choosing to stay here. I really appreciate that, but now we have to get the parents on board. We have to get the community on board as well. What you can do, because like you said, that is a great success to have 2 children that you've raised and they've been successful. So as a community member who does not have school-age children, there's a lot of things you can do. We take a lot of things for granted that you would not even know that some of these kids haven't even been exposed to. Something as simple as sitting down at the table and having a meal. So when you and your husband, this is your husband. So when y'all do that, invite a child in from the community. Reach out to the teachers and the counselors and ask them if they have somebody they think that would enjoy just having dinner with you. You're gonna have dinner anyway, right? Not saying to go out to a restaurant and do it. Just bring them in your home and sit down and have a conversation. Even my girls tell me that when they come at my house, they say, like, we never do this at our house. We never sit down as a family. It's the small things. Social media is a big thing in this area. So use that as your platform. One of my girls needed a tutor in chemistry because she was doing, she was failing chemistry. I reached out on social media and a mother of a doctor actually told her daughter that she was going to volunteer. And her name is Dr. Monica Riggs. And we could not come up with a time that they could meet face to face. And she FaceTimed, it was Janice. So Dr. Riggs FaceTimed her in chemistry, 3 different times? And she feels, for 3 days, and she feels very confident about the chemistry test that she had. So everybody has someone that they're strong in, so it could be literacy or anything like that. So if you can't have a face-to-face with a child, FaceTime, meet them where they're at. So she got her tutor, she didn't charge a dime, so things like that, because all parents can't afford to pay a tutor. And these teachers at the end of the day, they're ready to go home. They can't stay after school and tutor everybody, but as a community, all these educators and doctors, and you don't even have to be a doctor to be good at math, to be good, in science or anything. So as a community member, I really think that's something that you, your husband, and your neighbors, anybody, just reach out to, the different schools, ask them if they have anybody that you could help, that you could tutor, that you could mentor. You can mentor a child in so many different levels. It doesn't take training, it doesn't take money, it just takes time. It takes compassion, it takes a pure heart. That's all it takes. Just bringing them with you. It does, I mean, just to make groceries, the small things like that, that's all it takes. Anybody can be a mentor. People really think that you have to have all these accolades and all this training. No, just take the time. Take the gifts that God has given you and you pour it into somebody else. And that's how we're going to change our community. One child at a time, one community member at a time. And that's what it looks like.
And if you don't know, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. I was gonna say, there's a few places in town that like, someone answers the phone 5 days a week, well, in the summer, 4 days a week, but literally 12 months a year, someone's whole job is to answer the phone and to answer the doorbell when it rings. Like, I can speak for like Martin Millennium, like the door is open, like come, and if someone came and said, I have no idea how I can help, but I want to help. We will, like, to that point, we will figure it out. We have a community member who runs a needlepoint club. Like, she's like, what I can do is I can needlepoint. I'm like, cool. We've got 2 Fridays a month, we're gonna find some kids, and they talk, and they just like, some of them are learning to needlepoint, some of them aren't. But like, you don't have to be, to that point, like, love that there is a doctor in the community that's helping, but like, you can just be like, whatever your passion is, whatever brings you joy, whether it's like sitting down to eat dinner, but like, come ring the doorbell, call the school, send an email, we've got Facebook, like to that point, like social media. Like I would love to be able to run around town all day and like knock on doors and be like, what are you good at? Well, how do you want to come help? But we don't, and maybe we should do more of that to that point. But like I would love to have my inbox like full of community members who saying, hey, I've got 10 minutes every other Friday, what can I do? And I will find some way for you to touch a child at my school.
I got 2 more people, her and Jones. Then they got another event, so we got to cut it after that.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo off of what you're saying. So I'm an educator at MMA. I've been here for 2 years now, and can honestly say I have fallen in love with Tarboro. And my students don't understand why, and that kills me. They are wondering why I want to stay here so bad for another year. And I have to tell them, like, I don't think you understand how important community is at the end of the day, and the actual awesome community that we have here in Tarboro that I don't think a lot of our students see. They hear about like the negative aspects of it and they don't get to experience the awesome things that actually go on here. And I think that's like really important for them. Another thing that I've been struggling with as an educator is like you were talking about, like gather around the dinner table. Back like when I was a student, and my students can attest to this as well, like 5 years ago, they're like, our teachers would always take us out to dinner. And they would have us over at our house. And I would love to do that with my students. But also the sad reality is, like, safety is a big issue. And like, I also know that I can't really have students over at my house, or I can't drive them to a restaurant. So I guess that's kind of a question I have, like, how can we interact with them outside of school besides going to their sporting events, their band practices, you know, that aspect, because I would love to be a part of their life. I've gone to some of their houses to like eat dinner with them and like experience their home life, but if they don't have a home life, like how do we still involve outside of that? You know?
About to go to James real quick, but speaking on that, you say you're going to take your students to dinner. I'm gonna tell you now, I'm gonna go and say it now. It was never a weekend when Coach Jenkins and never take, you know where I came. Man, I miss them days. But hold on. Oh, you good?
Yeah. Just to piggyback on what the last 2 people shared, man, there's so many things that we can do as a community that does not involve being certified. Like she just mentioned, she don't have a place to take the kids. Mr. Jefferson cook. I cook, we can find a video where we can just have these kids come together and we can get some etiquette, some things of how they can and can't do in life. Not just all about education, but we can bring them together, we can have a meal with them, we can talk and have the same discussion with the parents and the kids on another level and get deep with them, let them know that they need to be in school, not just when it's time for this. I volunteered at my house school
when it's good times, when it's bad times, and it's not on her time, but it's everybody else's time. Because I'm a coach, so I also fill in the father figure for a lot of the kids that because they don't have a father figure, and I think that has a lot to do with what goes on in the classroom because there's not a strong man telling them to get right. So I don't mind going to the schoolhouse, looking at them, having a meal with them at lunch, and saying, "Hey, let's get this thing together, bring the whole team together. So look, we gonna all sit down together, we gonna talk, find out how your day's going, just simple things like that. Because like I said, just a general conversation from a common person that looks like them is gonna get them a whole lot further."
I agree with that 100%. And y'all make sure y'all plug in Anthony and Hump Knuckles for y'all you get food.
Yes,
I got one thing.
Fantastic venue.
Yeah, you do. You sure do.
And TBC is also.
I got one more thing that and I'm gonna cut it off, but I'm gonna just put it in these type of words. I know last week, like Chanel was saying earlier about, it's amazing that we're having a community event talking about parenting and helping these kids get their grades up. But it's interesting, like everybody was, we all know on Facebook blasting about, I'm not even in that conversation to talk about anybody, but blasting the fact that we didn't win the state championship, but we're having events that are priorities, dealing with grades, dealing with career, dealing with the future, because everybody's not going to make it to the NFL. So what can we do using that tool of sports to possibly get them in college? As in just their grades, is there something else we can do to help these, I guess, parents who think their kids are NFL eligible, to get to the next level, if y'all want to talk about that? It's up to you guys.
Let me say, as a former coach,
Coach, this ain't easy.
So thanks for that shout out, Ryan. Ryan played basketball for me in high school. I was his basketball coach, and I was really hard on him, so I felt like I needed to do something for him to like me. So I took him out every now and then. I think that, and I'm just speaking for me. Okay, I'm not representing Tarboro High School right now. I'm speaking for me as a coach. My interest was whole child, and so you couldn't play for me if you didn't have all the attributes. So academically, socially, athletically, I don't care how gifted you were as an athlete. If you weren't academically sound, and if you weren't socially sound, you couldn't play. And you remember, so I can tell this is purposeful. Yeah. So Ryan Jones never started a game for me until a kid on our team made a C on the test. Kid made a C, he said, I passed the test, and I was like, that's not our standard. Our standard is to be a better, so you don't play. So we had a 10-game win streak, Ryan started, hit 6 threes, career high, and so he still reminds me of that story now. But my point was, I wasn't afraid to lose a game. I wasn't afraid to sacrifice the win streak. I wasn't afraid at all, because I knew at the end of the day, like, my vision as a coach is when I run into you 10 years from now, regardless of where you are and what you're doing in life, I want to make sure that there was some good seeds planted and that somehow or another you found your own pathway to success. And you're right, only 1% of high school athletes nationwide make it to the pros. That's the hockey league, baseball, football, basketball, whatever. And so we have to start dealing with kids from a whole child lens. And if we don't do that, we set kids up for failure. So every time I see an NFL player or NBA player that's being kicked off the team because of bad attitude, I'm not upset with the GM and the owners. I'm upset because that T-ball coach or that middle school coach or that high school coach put their talent before they put their character. And so in terms of that, we got to make sure that we're really investing in the whole child and just really understanding, like, listen, dude, you may or may not make it, but academically sound, you can make it wherever you want to go, right?
Oh, we got it. It's his birthday, y'all. Y'all wish him happy birthday.
Hey everybody, so I just want to mention, my name is Andrew Ransom. I have a farm in Pine Tops, and we run a program. It's called an Agriculture Athlete Program. Everybody's kind of wondering like what we do. It's pretty much just we taking the athletes in the county and just teaching them agriculture. Having a more agriculture curriculum, teaching them math, science, their skilling in agriculture. So we're reducing regression just by having our hands in the soil. So there's different therapies that we're using that can connect our kids and our athletes back into agriculture, back into the land. So just in case they fall short of their professional dreams of being, the best athletes around, they have something to fall the biggest industries. So giving them something to fall back on in that career that's so broad is that's a creative way for us to connect with our young generation and give them something positive to look forward to. And it's also a lot of nutritional values that they're learning, how to take care of their bodies, mentally, physically, and emotionally. So that's just pretty much what we're trying to do and how we connect sports with agriculture and other different things that they can do instead of
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Good evening, my name is Calvin Hackers. I was the newspaper reporter for Delta Southern for many years, so I've been involved with education, sports, and a lot with Edgecombe County and also Tarboro. So when the incident happened Saturday night and it continued on right now, I contacted the coach and I asked him how many players did he have to go to college since 2009. And I think you all will be surprised at the number, and I'm almost sure that this is not the exact number. I'm thinking it's going to be more. According to the coach, we had 31 players to go to college. And out of that 31, you had 2 to go to the NFL and 1 to the Canadian League. And that's a good sized number there. I think what is happening is just because some of the kids could run fast or is quick and jump high, sometimes we think they should go into the professional ranking, but it's not like that. I looked at something today, I think it was Delaney High School, if I'm not mistaken. I may have that wrong name. There was a high school in Washington, D.C., and they was saying they are the team of the school that has the most NFL players in the league. And of that number is only 18 out of all those many years. So some of us, if we are putting too much emphasis on NFL or professional ranking, where we should start putting the emphasis on the college, and even college. And let me tell you this story right quick before, and then I'm gonna pass it over. I didn't go to college when I got out of school. I didn't want any parts of it. My parents didn't go to college. I got 3 children. I got a 37, she got a master, and 2 bachelors, and I got a 31, he has a bachelor, and then I have a 50-year-old who is inspired to go to college. So what I'm saying, when I say that is, we have to do what best for our kids. School is not for everybody. So what we need to do is say, what is best for our kids? And once we do that, I think Edgecombe County, Tarboro, and our children will be in a better place. Thank you.
I hate to cut it short, but I think that's it. I appreciate Anthony, Coach Jenkins, Ms. Bentley, Ms. Mudd, James, Lamprod. I appreciate you guys coming. Let's not stop here, people. Let's continue this from where it's at. Not just here just to talk, not just here to listen. Let's put action to it. Action is better than just talking. Talking is the first step, but the action is the next step. Thank you guys for everybody coming.